There's just something about the 1911. It sucks you right in like a tractor beam. Everything from the trigger, the action on the slide, the reset of the trigger, it's just different from a modern striker fired rig. That all metal frame has a completely different feel to it in every way. And the Rapide Heat from Kimber is a modernized 1911 that gives you the best of the original design with the modern options you want, like a light rail, an optic cut, and a factory Magwell right out of the box. And since it's 9mm, the recoil is very different from the original 1911 design, which fires the Lord's caliber, also known as the .45. Now, my first Kimber was a TAC entry 2, and I carried that pistol on duty for approximately 7 years, and it served me well. But in the modern market, the Rapide Heat provides options my old TAC entry just couldn't. What's up, everybody? I just get a case of the smiles when I get to do a 1911 video because I'm very partial to the 1911. I appreciate it. It was one of the first pistols I ever fired, and this is definitely a sexy little red number from Kimber that I wanted to get a video out on for you guys because it's got all the modern stuff that we want in a pistol today, but with the good stuff that the 1911 design gave us, like the trigger, which is what everybody in the market chases when it comes to an aftermarket or a factory trigger. So let's just get right into the performance and the testing we did here with the Kimber Rapide Heat, because that's really what matters and where the rubber meets the road. So as far as the ammunition goes, I tested all the stuff I always test. That 115 grain all the way through 147 grain self-defense, multiple different types of hollow point ammunition to ensure the feeding is going to be on point and what you're gonna need out there for the reliability you would expect from a modern 1911. I ran this pistol a couple of different ways. One fully outfitted with an X300 and a Trijicon RMR, but I also ran it just plain Jane right out of the box because I know people want to see it outfitted both ways. And of course, you can judge the recoil in the video and the slow motion between the fully outfitted and the bare bones version with nothing on it, and kind of make a decision on if a 9mm is for you. But obviously, like I said, since it is 9mm, the recoil control is much easier than a 45 for the vast majority of people out there. Now, there is one thing that I did notice when I was out there firing this on the range with my grip that came up, and we are definitely going to talk about that here in just a minute. But as far as the ammunition and the cycling process goes out there, I didn't have any issues with any of the ammunition I ran, and I didn't have any failure to function, failure to extract, failure to eject, no problems at all. And that was with the 115 all the way through the 147 grain self-defense ammunition. Even the last bit of that Turkish ammo that I thought I was done with, that seems to have given me nothing but problems and more squib loads than I have ever seen. Even that garbage ran just fine. And hopefully I don't find another box of that hiding in the closet. I know I should just get rid of the rest of it, but I'm a cheapo and I fire all the ammunition I can get. So functionality wise, it was exactly what you should expect out of a modern pistol. The controls seem to be right where you'd want them. It's got that ambidextrous safety on there, traditional backstrap safety, and of course a very solid trigger, which we will put on the trigger gauge here shortly. We do have to pause for a second and give a little bit of love to the sponsor, which is Brownell. So they've been a big supporter of the channel for a very long time. They help me keep all of these things fed and running out on the range. And of course, they make sure I can maintain the upkeep on my website, which is where all the parts lists and build lists are, which pretty much will have everything we talk about and see in the video here today. That'll be the first link in the description down below. If you're watching on TV, I'll put a QR code up here so you can scan that, check it out while you're watching. But big thanks to Brownells for the support, not only for me, but for other channels and the Second Amendment as a whole. Now, one of the things I've always told people is if you do not know how to run a 1911, it will most assuredly run you, because not only do you have the backstrap safety, so you got to have a good high grip on there, you've got a manual safety there, and if you don't know what you are doing, you're just going to have problems out there manipulating the safety, the controls, and magazine release, and doing all your drills. So make sure you put in the time when it comes to a 1911. Now, me personally, I only get to fire one every couple of months now because of all the testing I'm doing, so I'm not as fresh as I generally am, but hey, we all seem to get behind on things from time to time, right? One of the things I was most happy to see was the addition of the factory Magwell on the Rapide Heat, because since the profile of the 1911 grip is much more narrow than like a modern double stack 9mm striker fired setup, Your window for air right here on a mag exchange is not very wide, right? So you got to be on it. But the addition of that Magwell, just make sure you get the magazine in there really quick with a little bit more ease because of that additional surface area. But after several hundred rounds of testing everything from that 115, the 124, all the way up to the 147 grain self-defense ammunition, I ran into no functional problems at all, either related to the pistol or the ammunition that I was using out there, whether it was ball or hollow point style self-defense stuff. And at that point, I was pretty happy with the performance because it's a 1911, and generally if there's gonna be a problem with a 1911, it's going to happen right up front and right away, or near the end of a maintenance part life, like a spring or something like that. So how about we get into some of the finer details in this pistol, and of course, put that trigger on the gauge. All right, let's take a good look at what we actually are gonna get with our Kimber Rapide Heat, no matter which color variation you go with. Of course, you're gonna get a nice cardboard box, which I'm sure you're all interested in. Inside, you will get this nylon carrying case. You're gonna have some information from Kimber. You will have your standard lock that is in there. You will also have a little Kimber takedown tool, which is always helpful. You'll have another additional pocket in here with some retainers, that bungee stuff for extra magazines. In the main compartment, you have the manual for the pistol, which is very important. Always read the manual. And you can fit a pistol in here, and then a pistol in this case as well. And of course, you'll have your little chamber flag and all that stuff in there as well. But let's go ahead, move this out of the way, and start going over some of the finer details and specs when it comes to the Rapide Heat. So you will get one magazine with it. It will be this exact one right here. And you're gonna hold 9 rounds in that thing. You can buy various other magazines, but that is what you will get with it. As far as the custom stuff, before we get into the basic specs of this thing, so you can see you've got those G10 grips in a pattern that matches all of the slide work. You've got that Kimber custom stippling work here on the front, all that engraving. You got a little bit of kind of almost like an undercut right here, which is kind of nice. Not a lot of 1911s have that. You got a nice recess right here for the meat of your palm to go into, and it's not gonna activate that safety at all because all your meat's gonna be right up in there. You do get more of that kind of matching machine work on the back strap, which is really nice, has a very good texture to it when your hand is gripping onto that. A little bit of texture on that back strap safety. And of course, as you can see, you're gonna get those rear serrations, front serrations, lightning cuts with that kind of dual, kind of like bevel inlaid cut design inside the windows. You get some windows across the top, and it's like a flat profile. You get 3-dot white sights on there, which is always nice to have, especially since you can actually use those sights through your optic, right, as a backup. Very important if you run an optic. You get a multi-slot 1913 rail. It is toolless takedown, and this version does come with a threaded barrel, and then you have that very nice profiled trigger in there. So overall, very well done. And then you have all your traditional, markings on there from Kimber, where it's made, all that stuff that's mandated by the ATF, right? But overall, a very, very nicely outfitted pistol. So what about those specs? The Rapide Heat version right here in 9mm is gonna be 5¼ inches from front to back. It's gonna weigh approximately 38 ounces, obviously without the light and the optic on there. The capacity out of your magazine, it's going to be 9 rounds, like I said. And your recoil spring factory in here is going to be 12 pounds. You can mess with those, completely up to you, but I would leave this one factory. It feels just fine. As far as the frame goes, it is steel. It is coated in Kim-Pro black finish. That is specific to them. You have the 1913 Picatinny rail on there. Overall, it's gonna do everything you need a frame to do and look good while doing it. As far as the width goes, it's 1.28 inches wide in total. The slide is made of stainless steel, obviously with those stepped cocking serrations, all the work, the windows, the lightning cuts, all the good stuff. Sights, 3 white dot sights, like I said. You will need a optic plate if you plan to run an optic on this pistol. And they do have different variations of this plate available. Whether you want an RMR, a loophole, whatever footprint you want, they pretty much have you covered. And then that red trigger is aluminum and is their V-cut trigger design. So overall, those are the main specs that you're probably actually going to care about. And if you want to see that rail, I'll go ahead and take the light off for you. But you can see that you do have a multi-slot accessory well, and it's very, very nice and well done as far as the machine work goes. And pretty much all the machine work, whether it's the grips, that front texturing, all the way through the slide, everything on here just looks absolutely perfect. There are no imperfections in the coating or the machine work or workmanship of this pistol, at least that I can see. So how about that gauge, right? So one of the Patreons actually sent this new gauge in. I guess they didn't like the old one, so thank you to you Patreons out there. I really appreciate that. If you're interested in supporting the channel, Patreon will be linked down below. Of course, that build list will be linked down below as well. But let's go ahead and we're gonna do 3 trigger pulls here, unless I do something weird. And since this is a 1911, we're gonna pull directly from the center of the trigger because this trigger works linear, straight back and forth. Not a striker fire trigger where your best leverage is at the bottom and it works on an arc. So your best leverage here on a 1911 is dead center of the trigger. Let's make sure we're ready to go. All right, so that one pulled right there at 3 pounds and 3 ounces. Let's go again. Make sure we're good on this gauge. I'm trying to pull at an even rate of speed because if you pull too fast on these electronic gauges, sometimes you'll get a really light reading. So 3 pounds and 5 ounces, that's good. Now Kimber does market this trigger at about 4 to 5 pounds. So this gauge is showing a little bit lighter than what their website says. And that one was 3 pounds and 7 ounces. So that 1911 trigger, that's your standard kind of movement and play. And then there's your break, reset, wall, break. There's just nothing like a good quality 1911 trigger. All right, let's talk problems or any other issues. Remember when I talked about something that happened with my grip? Now I'm gonna roll some footage in here, but I want you to take a look at my hand. You can probably see right along here, there's a nice long big scar. So I've had some pretty good damage to that hand and wrist over the years from fighting and work and training and all kinds of different stuff. And when I was out running my 1911s and stuff, I noticed something not only on this Kimber, but on some of my 2011s, and that was, I'd be shooting and I would just like it freeze, like trigger freeze, but like really bad. So if you don't know what trigger freeze is, that's where you're shooting, and basically your trigger finger just kind of locks up on you. So as I was out there, I was running the gun, and I would freeze and it kept happening. And like I said, it happened on this, and it happened on my Bull 2011, and it happened on my old Springfield. And I was kind of weirded out because also my thumb like got super sore right in the joint. Well, what I realized is due to the damage in my wrist, for some odd reason, it's going to be kind of hard to show you this, but as I'm grabbing the pistol, for some reason, instead of down like this on my offhand, which is, you know, where you want your hands to be, kind of like this, for some odd reason, my thumb just wanted to press itself up against the frame like that. So it caused the safety right here to basically jam into that joint, and it would just lock my hand up. So I kind of had to adjust my grip, and instead of grabbing like I normally would on pretty much any pistol, and like I've always grabbed 1911s, I had to basically roll my thumb to the side like that on the safety and kind of keep it like that. I know that might be tough to see, but basically instead of my thumbs being on top of each other, you know, like this, I had to roll that thumb kind of like that. And that was kind of weird for me, but if you've had injuries to your wrist or to your hand, especially recently, and you do carry 1911s, make sure you go get a little time in it with that thing, because like I said, it's been a couple of months for me, and I didn't notice that issue until I started running a couple of 1911s and 2011s recently to film these videos. So just kind of like a, you know, PSA for you if you're into the 1911 thing. So how do I feel about the Rapide Heat? Not only in the functionality, but the looks, right? And I know most people out there are gonna say looks don't matter, but let's be honest, 1911s are sexy, and this hot little red number is just absolutely sexy as can be. So if looks your thing, it's very aesthetically pleasing. If you like the look of a 1911, it's very aesthetically pleasing with all of the slide work, the grip work, matching grips, all the, you know, contours that they've engraved into this thing or milled into it. It's just a very solid looking pistol. And if you're not into the red color, they have a blue version, they have a black version, and kind of like a grayish version as well. Sorry, gentlemen, no pink at this time, but they do have several other color offerings if red is just not your thing, as well as they have threaded and non-threaded barrel versions in case you live in a restrictive state. But everything from the functionality, the controls, the reliability, all seem to be on point with what I would expect from a modern 1911. And again, I've owned a bunch of Kimbers over the years, and this one specifically, my old TAC Entry 2, has well over 10,000 rounds of 45 through it. The springs have all been changed multiple times, obviously, because those are maintenance parts. But I've got a pretty good amount of experience with multiple different styles of Kimber pistols, from full size to commanders to more compact versions. And overall, I have had a very good experience. As far as everything else goes, it gives me everything I want in the modern package, from the optics cut, the rail, the Magwell, everything I want, the threaded barrel so I can put a suppressor on there should I feel spicy that day. So it gives me everything I want with the reliability that I personally have come to expect from Kimber. Now, as far as the price point goes, and this is where it's definitely going to get spicy in the comments. This is not a polymer poured, cast molded pistol. These are fully metal, hand-fitted style 1911 pistols. So they're not going to be polymer striker fire cheap. So when I tell you that the price is $1,900 for that complete package, I don't scoff at that. But again, I'm a huge fan of 1911 and 2011 pistols, so I come to understand that they are far more expensive, to the tune of like more than double most times for really nice ones, than your average striker fired rig. Again, imagine the work that goes into something that's hand fitted and all metal like this, as compared to something that's injected molded polymer and basically fits together very loosely and sloppily and pretty much runs like a Glock. I'm not saying those things are bad. They're awesome. I've carried them. I own a lot of them, but they're not nearly as refined or as difficult to make as a 1911. But there is one thing that I would personally change, and this is like a personal thing, but it's that like it would be just 2% better kind of thing. And for me, that has to do with the slide stop slide release. So because of the size of my hand, I'm able to manipulate this pistol much like a striker fired rig, where I can do a magazine exchange and I can drop the slide. And I know everybody's gonna freak out in the comments, be like, oh my God, you dropped the slide on a 1911 with an empty changer. It's gonna be fine, trust me. So I can operate this much like a striker rig. Most people have to use their offhand to manipulate that. So I really like a slightly extended control on the slide stop slide release. Again, 100% end user preference. It's just one of those things where I'm like, oh, like 1% better, 2% better for me. Everything else in this pistol is just good to go. Now, tell me if I'm wrong, but it seems to be that everybody remembers very distinctly their first experience with a 1911. They can tell you the brand, they can tell you who owned it, what color it was, they can tell you the smells in the air when they shot it. And I've always found that very interesting, because I can surely remember my first experiences with a 1911. So I'm curious to know, what was your first experience in the comments down below. Make sure you get subscribed to the channel, and remember, if you stay ready, you ain't gotta get ready. I will see you all on the next one.